Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada.
Good morning and welcome to Story Time. Thank you so much for joining in on this beautiful Monday. Thank you for joining in. And today we are reading Marvelous Cornelius, and this one is written by Phil Bildner and illustrated by John Parra. And of course, we're reading this one with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Good morning to you and welcome to Story Time. Thank you so much for joining me today on this lovely Monday, this very important Monday that we are recognizing. Of course, we are today commemorating Dr. King. So absolutely love it that we're here and able to be together. And of course, take time to remind ourselves of the importance of Dr. King. He's complete in all his complexity, and not just a person that we want to idealize, but we know it's a person that fought hard for our rights and also a person that was killed just fighting for those rights. So let us not forget and always remember that we can play our part. But today we will be reading this story, and I thought it is a great story to read today, particularly because we're talking about a sanitation worker, and we know that the day Dr. King was killed, he was out in Memphis, Tennessee, in support of Black sanitary workers out there who were being mistreated. So this has a tie into that, but also just a reminder of ourselves that 1968 is when Dr. King was killed, fighting injustice. And today, 2021, we are still going through some of those struggles. So we can do better as a people. We can do better as a nation. So thank you so much for joining in Story Time, and absolutely love it that we're here together to remind ourselves of what's important. And of course, not forgetting that this is a special week. As on Wednesday, we know that the new president, new vice president will be inaugurated. I think it is new beginnings, and indeed, refreshing to think of that new start, and let us hope that we can keep moving forward. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time. I am glad you're here. I will try not to preach to you today, but it is so hard on a very important day like this one. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time wherever you are. I am glad you're here. And also just remind ourselves, parents, the kids out there are growing, they're learning from us adults. Let us make sure that we normalize them seeing people who are different from them, that we normalize them talking to people, interacting with people that are different, interacting with different neighborhoods. So people, we are afraid of what we don't know. We are afraid of what we don't understand. So if our kids can learn about other people and interact with them as humans, as equal humans, the treatment I can say would be different. So let us remember that as we are interacting in our communities. Let us expose ourselves to other people, and let us not be afraid of what we don't know. Let us learn about it. And that's what I have to say today. But I have this great book, and I hope that we learn something from it. And of course, we keep reminding ourselves, we always learn. We have to keep learning. We have to keep learning. You cannot stop learning, because the day you do that is the day that injustice wins. We have to keep doing things better and aiming to do things better. Good morning to you, kids, and welcome to Story Time. And the adults that are joining us, thank you so much. As we today remember Dr. King, let us remember why Dr. King did what he did and why Dr. King was killed. But thank you so much for joining in. All right, Marvelous Cornelius. And this one is written by Phil Bildner and illustrated by John Parra. And of course, we're reading it with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. But before we get started, let us see who is with us this morning in enjoying this beautiful story on this very, very important day. And remember, this week on Storytime, we will be recognizing important workers like Cornelius here, doing important work that sometimes may not be as celebrated as the presidency or other, high office. But nonetheless, this is the work that keeps our economies moving. This is the work that keeps us going and puts food on people's tables. Thank you so much for joining in. All right, here we go. Out in Long Beach, California, good morning to you, Rocco, Clay, and Chriselle. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. Missed you on Friday. I am glad you are here today. Thank you so much for joining in. Absolutely love it. Good morning to you, Soraya, and cousin Alice, who is 6 years old, and you are out in Los Angeles. Good morning to you, and welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in on this special day. Marietta and Henry out in Harvard. How are you doing today? Harvard, Massachusetts. Good morning to you. And it just started snowing. Well, I hope we bring you the warmth. I hope we bring you all the laughs and cuddles that you want. And of course, as we keep reminding ourselves, some great lessons to be learned in life. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. And welcome back to you, Jayada, Marco Santago, and little in Sunnyvale. Good morning to you. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining in, Jayada, Marco, Santago, and Camille. Thank you so much for joining in. Good to see you here again. Thank you. And this is why I love holiday readings, because we get people coming back that we've not seen in a while and joining in and able to join in because of time that allows. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Good to see you back here. Jack from Portland, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining in. Absolutely, this is a great story. I am glad to see you here. Ross Collins, my hugs to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Jack, good morning to you. Ellen Edwards in Chicago, snowy Chicago, Massachusetts snow, Chicago snow. We're missing out here in Auckland. Please send us some of that snow. Good morning to you and welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in. Jen Vera, you say happy MLK Junior Day to everybody. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen Vera, for joining in. Good morning to you. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. Absolutely love it that you are here. And who else is joining us? Today? Good morning to you out in San Francisco. Laura, how are you doing? Please, Laura, remind me who is joining in with you, if there's a little one joining in with you. And if not, you are very welcome to the Storytime community. Thank you so much for joining us. And out in Lisbon, João Tiago and Sonia Abrantes, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Or is it good evening out where you are? Nathan and Sarah, I hear Illinois is snowing right now, so please do stay warm, do stay comfortable. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. Thank you, Trudy, and everybody that is listening out there. Please remember, if you have recommendations for Storytime, do send them my way. Just message me and I will try and look up into them so we see if there are stories that we can share or we're allowed to share on Storytime. Thank you so much for that. Good morning to you, Isabella, Luis, and Leslie right here in Oakland, and of course Danny as well. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining in. Oh, absolutely. Jen Veda, thank you for the affirmation. You say it doesn't feel like preaching, you're sharing important messages. Absolutely. Thank you. You know, like it's just something that is really, truly dear to my heart. And I just want to make sure that our kids are growing up the right way. And we as adults are continually reflecting, continually reminding ourselves of what is important. Thank you so much for joining in. And to you, Aurelia Lee with Andres and Cara out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. How is the East Coast today? Good morning to you, representing right there. Thank you so much. Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Ross Collins and Jack. Absolutely appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining in today. Good morning to you, Marvin and Jekwa. How are you doing? Thank you for joining in. A very important reading today indeed. Thank you so much. And before we go into our story one more time, who do we have? Good morning to you, Laura. You say celebrate. You're joining in with 4-year-old Michelangelo. Beautiful name. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. Michelangelo, good morning to you. Mehita Belkamanga out in Katete, Zambia. Good morning to you. And you're joining in with baby Evan. Good morning to you. And welcome to Story Time. All right. So now we're going to get started with our story. And this one is Marvelous Cornelius. Hurricane Katrina and the Spirit of New Orleans. And it is written by Phil Bildner and illustrated by John Parra. Good morning to you, and let us get started. And of course, we're reading this one with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Good morning to you. All right. Marvelous Cornelius, Hurricane Katrina and the Spirit of New Orleans, by Phil Bildner and illustrated by John Parra, and read with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. A big, big thank you to Chronicle Books in particular for allowing us to share so many of their books right here on Storytime. Amazing support indeed, and to all the creators out there. All right, so this one starts off with a quote from Dr. King, right? On MLK Day, I feel is just appropriate. And the book has, it says, even if it's called your lot to be a street sweeper, go out and sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Handel and Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. So whatever you do, remember it is important. All right, here we go. In the quarter, there worked a man known in New Orleans as Marvelous Cornelius. Morning! He saluted the silver-haired man with the Times Picayune tacked under his arm. A picayune tacked under his arm. Greetings, he waved to the couple with the baby on the balcony. Ma'am, he nodded to the woman shaking rags out on her front window. And when his truck rounded the turn, maybe. My young uns, he called to the kids crowding the corner. Marvelous Cornelius, they cheered. Marvelous Cornelius. At each home, Cornelius sashayed to the curb and shimmied to the hopper, unloading the garbage. Not a single praline wrapper ever stayed on the streets. And those spotless streets, oh, how they sparkled. Woo, 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 woo. He called to his driver when it was time to stop. And then, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat, he strammed aside when it was time to move. Hooty-hoo, hooty-hoo! Showtime! His favorite call of all. You should try it, kids. Call like Marvelous Cornelius did. Hooty-hoo, hooty-hoo, showtime! Cornelius front flipped to the curb and flung the bags over his head, behind his back, between his legs, into the truck. He lined bags along the curb and then launched them. Bag after bag after bag after bag after bag. They landed in a perfect pyramid inside the hopper's metal mouth. Oh. Bang! He clapped the covers like cymbals and twirled the tins like tops, wheezing and spinning back and forth across the street. And just like those twisting tops, Cornelius danced too, tangoing up to lose. Samboing down St. Peter, rumboing up Royal, cha-chaying down Charters, and everyone danced along. The old ladies whistled and whirled. The old men hooted and hollered. The barbers bead twirlers, and beignet bakers bounded behind the one-man parade. Oh. But then one day, the storm came. The great city filled with water. People and pets, parks and playgrounds washed away. Schools and shops, streets and streetcars washed away. What's happened to the great city? For far too long, water everywhere, a gumbo of mush and mud. When those waters finally fell away, Cornelius looked out at the mountains of ruins, some as high as the steeple atop St. Louis Cathedral. It would take thousands of me to clean this, he wept. Millions. Was Cornelius going to get help? Cornelius rose. He dried his eyes, for his spirit and will were waterproof. For his spirit and will were waterproof. And just like he did every morning, he emptied the garbage into his hopper. And the kids who crowded the corner, they pitched in too. So did the silver-haired man, the couple from the balcony, the woman with the rugs, the old ladies and old men, the barbers, bead twirlers, and beignet bakers. Everybody joined in. Others too, from Brooklyn and from Boise, Baltimore, Bakersfield, Syracuse, Seattle, Santa Fe, San Antonio. All over people came down. They streamed the Crescent City, thousands, millions, a flood of humanity. Hooty-hoo! Marvelous Cornelius cheered. Hooty-hoo! 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 Try it, kids. As the great city rose again, marvelous Cornelius, he passed on. But as for his spirit, that's part of New Orleans. New Orleans forever after. The end. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time today. I am glad you were able to join us for that beautiful, beautiful story indeed. And that has been Story Time for today. That one was Marvelous Cornelius, Hurricane Katrina, and the Spirit of New Orleans. This one is written by Phil Bildner and illustrations by John Parra. Good morning to you, and of course read with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining in today on this very special day as we remember Dr. King. Please remember why Dr. King is important, why he lived the life that he lived, what he fought against, and what he represented. Thank you so much for joining in today. And remember too that Dr. King died fighting for what's right. So the fight continues. We still continue. We can play our part. But of course, Marvelous Cornelius there reminding us that we will face hardships, but also let us love what we do and let us do it to the best of our ability. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time today. I am glad you were able to join me for this story today. And like I was saying at the beginning today, that this was an appropriate story to read today because Dr. King was killed in Memphis, Tennessee, when he was out there in support of Black sanitary workers who were being mistreated. So let us remember that, and let's remember that the struggle continues. Yes, indeed. We might be comfortable where we are, but let us remember that somebody else needs our help, needs our voice to speak up, needs us to move and be there with them. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time. Absolutely love it. Young ones, I know I have all the hope in you that you will do the right things for our future. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. This has been Storytime on this very special Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you for joining in. Tomorrow we are back. And remember, on Storytime we said, this week we will be looking at stories that talk about all the different occupations that people do that we celebrate, that are important. Right now we know how our essential workers are important, and everybody does something and it contributes to our communities. So tomorrow we'll be looking at a very special book as well. This bridge will not be gray. We'll be following some engineers as they went about trying to build, or building indeed, one of the greatest bridges of all time. So please do join in Storytime and find out what this book is all about. And of course, there are great laughs along the way. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Let us see who was with us today and the special messages that we have for you out there. Thank you so much for joining in. Andres and Cora, one more time, thank you for joining us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Good afternoon to you where you are. Aurelia Lee, thank you so much for joining in. And good morning to you one more time. Roz Collins, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate the encouragement. Absolutely love it. And important reading today says Marvin Jekwa out in Lusaka, Zambia with Litabezi. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. And of course, Michelangelo, 4-year-old Michelangelo, thank you so much for joining us today. And good morning to you, Laura, as well. Thank you so much. Good morning to you one more time, Andres. Good morning. And we had Mehitabel joining us with baby Evan. Thank you so much for joining in. And of course, Jen Vetter, you are recommending that one. Absolutely, we will be trying to get that on Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in, or at least directing people to that. Thank you so much for joining in. Harmony Beth, you say happy MLK Day. A warm and sunny Monday. Yes, it is out here in the Bay Area. Thank you so much for joining in. I've had enough snow and love the absence of it. Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Well, to everybody that is in the snow, we will try not to rub it in too much. Good morning to you, Darcy Luce. How are you doing? Sienna Emerson representing right here. Good morning to you. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining in. And Darcy, Happy New Year. I don't think I've seen you this year. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time. Good morning. Thank you. And of course, Martha Ashley Mulenga, how are you doing? And Lusungu, and you say, oh, wow, lovely story. Love and positive vibes from Zambia. Absolutely. And I'm passing those positive vibes right on to the entire Storytime community. Thank you so much for joining in today. Terry McLeod Mulishani. I put to the field, Tule Lila. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. How are you doing? Abraham and Humphrey, how are you today? And you say, what a great book indeed. Absolutely. Sonia Abrantes, thank you so much. And we will see you tomorrow for more Storytime. Jennifer Vera, thank you so much. What a marvelous book. Thank you. Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. The struggle continues indeed. Marietta and Henry, thank you so much. You say great story. Looking forward to the story tomorrow. Absolutely. Marvin Njekwa, thank you so much for joining in. And you say inspired. Absolutely love it. Jayada, oh, absolutely. I will take a day off very soon, but I am so happy to be here. Being here uplifts me, makes me feel good. So I absolutely love it. And thank you for that reminder, Jayada. I will absolutely take that into consideration. Thank you. I hope you are enjoying your day off. Oh, thank you. And what a way to close. Camille, you say, have a great MLK Junior Day. Absolutely. If you're out on the streets, look out. I will be out there riding my bike. So hopefully see some of you who are nearby. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. This has been Storytime for today. An amazing book that we had for you. Marvelous Cornelius, Hurricane Katrina and the Spirit of New Orleans, written by Phil Bildner and illustrated by John Parra. And of course, we are back tomorrow when we read This Bridge Will Not Be Gray. So do join us for that one. From me, it is much love as always, and I will see you again in the morning when we are back with another amazing story. And have yourselves a beautiful day, and of course, enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some with people who look like me, others very different from the way that I look and think. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some stories from far away, others right here in my neighborhood. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some with people who look like me, others very different from the way that I look and think. Read me all of your stories. Read me all of your stories. Some stories from far away, others right here in my neighborhood. Story time. Ooh. Story time. Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing.